Hey everybody, I'm James Phelps and welcome to the Double Trouble with James and Oliver Phelps. This week, as we record this, it is the 5th of May, Cinco de Mayo, and today our guest is a very good friend of ours. Some would say a family member, our little sister, Bonnie Wright, has joined us this week.
Sí, hola mi amigos, mi llamo Oliver Phelps. James?
¿Cómo es tu español?
No.
So, as we see, we've got a running thing going really now to see how James's Spanish lessons have been coming along. So it turns out they're still going much of a muchness, but that's by the by. I'm really excited today to have our little sis, Bonnie Wright, joining us on the Double Trouble podcast because I think we're going to have a lot of fun and some very fun stories to talk about.
Very much so. So Bon currently lives in California and we are all the way over in England right now. So it's getting a bit late here, so we could catch her on a reasonable good time. But I know that we're going to have such a great laugh. We plan to ask her all about her environmental stuff, which she's really passionate on. And that actually has got me changing my ways in how I go about my daily life. Also, obviously, we're going to talk quite a bit of Potter. When we first met, through the filming, what different scenes and films in general were fun to do, right all the way up to modern day life, what she's up to now in her current career of directing and all that kind of fun stuff and everything else in between.
Yes, so as James said, it's going to have an absolutely very enjoyable listen for you guys this week. But anyway, James, what have you been getting up to this week?
What have I been getting up to? It's quite so. I've actually upped my fitness.
It sounds
game.
really action-packed.
It's very action-packed. I've upped my fitness game, so
okay.
I've been running more, and then today I actually did a online PT with Steve Common, who's a very good friend of mine, who's actually an amazing PT as well, and he absolutely kicked my rear end with this 30 minutes with 7K dumbbells. Not that heavy, but they were by the end of it. So I've really enjoyed doing that. So Oliver, what about you? It seems like, from what I can see in your background, have you done squares in your carpet?
Yes, I have done. So I have been. I'm actually in my my golf / cinema room in my house. I thought I'd change the background now. So what looks like a bit of a cinema screen is an impact screen for golf balls. Anyway, yes, and as you can see down here, I got a bit creative with the carpet, trying to make a nice. Normally I line them like fairways, but that's how productive my day or my evening has been. But also as well, I have been doing some more gardening, ripped out a few more shrubs and stuff, and then just cracking on with that really. And then what else have we been doing? I suppose just chasing up different stuff. There's a few business things that are still kicking on, which is nice. And very excited about that side of things, which gives me a bit of an interest away from, I suppose, this type of stuff. But yeah, so that's just stuff like that's been really exciting to do, and very much enjoying the questions and just a response really from last week's podcast with Haley. Big shout out to Haley as well for that one. That was absolutely fantastic. His input was really fun.
Yeah, very much so. I think what's also been great to see is that people have generally been excited and enjoying what we've been coming up with so far. I say what we've been coming up with. We've had some really great guests already with Joe and Haley. I know Bonnie today will be great as well. Actually, one thing that I need to address, if I may, take this little statement. So I keep getting certain people saying, you should cut your beard, you should cut your hair. Just so you're aware, the more people say that, the more I'm going to grow it. And both, I'm eventually going to be like, I want to look like Jasper from The Simpsons by the end of this from the end of this lockdown, I think.
Who, the old guy?
Yeah, you know, the one with the beard right the way down there.
You couldn't think of a more younger person who has a beard?
No, like, because Jasper's awesome, because, you know, he sings the Lollipop song. He's like, lollipop, lollipop. Like, that would be, that's going to be me by the end of this lockdown.
Is that going to be the intro then to the next one? Is you singing Lollipop, Lollipop?
We'll see. Who knows?
Also, as well, so I just put a quick thing up on my Twitter page, James. Now, I know we're limited for time because obviously we want to get to talking to Bon before it gets too late. But a couple of questions I just put down doing a podcast. Anyone got any questions? And literally, we have had in the last 16 seconds. Right, we've had someone say, how have you been during quarantine? What do you do to kill your time? That's from Uni Crew, and I think we've kind of just answered that one, haven't we?
Yeah. Well, I say fitness, reading quite a bit. I'm actually doing that at the moment as well, and also making sure I'm spending time with my family in the house. So my wife and my dog. We're having a lot of good little laughs going on, and annoyingly now it's turned out to be I've so we've had these pigeons keep coming into our garden, and at
You haven't
first
got
we
the
keep
rifle out, have
thinking,
you?
well, at first we kept thinking, oh, they're nice. They keep like the one would fly down, and you'd hear like this, and then this other
No, but
pigeon
this
would
time of
fly
year they're
down.
bad.
Well, then they'd start kissing, and then other things would start happening. And now it's, I don't know whether our our garden's got the word around. It's a bit of a pad, so I'm now having to shoo the pigeons away.
All these pigeons chucking the keys in the middle.
Exactly. Well, I don't know if it's that. It's just one couple comes down and it's like, no, 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 no. Go next door. Go somewhere else. So that's keeping me entertained at the moment. And why is it? Now I'm on a little rant. So I spent about literally 10 hours last week painting the new new fence, painting it and all that kind of stuff.
I'm doing that. I'm doing that this
within-
week, and I've bought one of those sprayers.
Yeah, well, that's great. But let me tell you what will happen within hours of you finishing. Some seagull or pigeon or eagle, whatever it will be, will decide, oh, that's nice. Let me change that for you. So you've got all that to look forward to as well.
Maybe what you need to do then is do like they did in Trafalgar Square and introduce hawks.
Oh yeah, I'm just going to get a hawk and sit it on my. That'd be quite
Why
funny.
not? I'm sure if anyone is listening here and knows a hawk, they could lend James for maybe, I think just 2 or 3 weeks would be okay.
Yes, please.
You could do that, couldn't you?
Well, I don't want to kill the birds. I just want them to
Well,
go
no,
away.
I'm pretty sure that, it'd be like one would get maybe a roughing up, and the other pigeons would look, or birds would go and go,
Ooh. I may just.
and do one. Okay, so going back to one or two more questions. This one comes from that's a very, very long name. That Thomas Brody Sangstefan girl, 1990. Hello. What's the weirdest late night thoughts you've had? James, give an answer to save this one, because I don't really. When I've been going to bed, I've been literally flat out and gone. I've got a very comfortable bed, so we have a rule where it's just straight to sleep.
Right. Okay. Well, I've actually started getting really back into my astronomy during this lockdown as well. So I've got a little old telescope which I dug out, and I started looking at the moon, which was rather fun. So I've got so into it actually that I've actually gone and treated myself to a new telescope, which should be arriving soon. Sorry, before I go completely space nerd again.
There we go.
But one thing I want to look at is Saturn, when eventually the Earth comes around and I can see Saturn. So I started thinking, people have seen Saturn for years, but obviously it was Galileo with his telescope who could actually see it for the first time with the rings and all that stuff. And did you know he originally thought that those rings were actually a handle?
A handle?
So it looked like a handle instead of as we know it to look now.
Right. Well, I suppose you're seeing something for the first time. You can think whatever it is, isn't it? Really?
Exactly. So let me give you a little fact of Saturn.
Okay.
Fact of the day. All right. So a day on Saturn is around 10.5 hours long. That's one day. But
That's
one
one
year
day.
on Saturn is 29 Earth years.
Really?
So there you go.
Gosh. Don't go to Saturn for a holiday then, because you'll be in trouble with your boss when you get home. Okay, so Christy da Silva has asked, do you prefer nights in or nights out? I assume she means before you could only have nights in. I would say nights out, I suppose. I love the interaction. I love the checking out things, but it depends where you're going on a night out. Obviously, if it's a night out, as we say, I haven't been out in a long time, James, have you?
Well, out.
So for people who are wondering, because a lot of people listening in America may not understand what we're on about, out is a term what we use over here is when you go out, but then you end up having a big night, be it you end up in a nightclub or you go to a couple of bars or you just keep going out really late. So that's going out. It's always quite funny because normally if you go out, you don't plan to go out.
I would rather be out, to be honest with you, especially where I live. There's a lot of the pubs are dog friendly, so I can take my dog with me as well. So there's the perfect night for me.
Very good, very good. Right, okay. So there is. Oh, they're all coming in here.
Well, I've got
Okay,
one.
shall we do?
Okay. Lindsay asks, Oliver, what's your favourite book?
My favourite book is.
Do you know, this whole call, I thought that you've had really bad sideburns, but it's your earphones you're wearing.
It's my earphones. Yeah, no, they're actually growing in really well. Yes, so it's called A Utterly Impartial History of Britain, or 2,000 Years of Upper-Class Idiots in Charge. And that's by John O'Farrell. So if you're looking for a very light-hearted way to learn and understand basically Britain up into the end of 1945, Second World War, that is an absolutely brilliant read, and it really breaks it down. I always thought that if history teachers taught it to me like that at school, it would have retained so much more growing up, because you do actually see also the good, and unfortunately with our culture or our country's history, there's quite a bit of baddies in there as well. So it's quite nice to learn that type of stuff. So that would be my answer to that one. James, do you have one at all?
I do, actually, and it's right here. Let me just get it down. So this is my favourite book of all time, called The Unknown Soldiers. It's considered Finland's greatest literacy book. Cannot recommend it enough. So it's on hardback, as you can see, but it's also on Kindle and all that other stuff, but I cannot recommend it enough. It is absolutely fantastic.
Very good. Okay, and there's last one.
I wasn't even planned either, which is there.
No, very good. You must be enjoying it if you're reading it. Okay, so the last one, because unfortunately, thanks to everyone who's replied so quickly, but Nikki Fazikas says, what's your quarantine playlist? What music do you listen to in these times? Ooh. So I was thinking of one the other day, and I was trying to think of what is a very, very good song, which I haven't heard for a long time, yet you could just listen to and almost just enjoy it the whole time. And it was Slide Away by Oasis.
Bloody hell, I thought you were going to come out with some...
No, it's tuned. It is an absolute amazing tune. And
it is
also,
a tune,
and
but
also,
I thought that build-up was going to be some kind of operatic masterpiece from the 1800s.
No, I mean, you can listen to stuff like that as well. You know, I'm quite partial to a bit of Elgar every now and then.
Right, yeah. I've had, so on my running playlist, I made quite a big mix of things and just put the shuffle on. So I've been listening to such hits as Get Your Shine On by Florida Georgia Line, 3-0 by Slipknot, Waste a Moment by Kings of Leon, and Breakaway by Kelly Clarkson. So that's on my random playlist at the moment.
That's quite a random mix.
It's a bit of a diverse one, but it's ever so good for running. If you don't want too much up-tempo straight away, because then you just go too hard and you can blow out. You don't want too soft and you go a bit too slow. So just have a bit of a flow. Yes. I did a run the other morning, nice and early, literally a sunrise, so at about 5:30ish. Actually ran my golf course, so I started at the first and finished at 18, like normal. Good fun. Anyway, how far was that? Well, including from my front door, I made like a nice loop of it type thing. Yeah, it was around 8K, something like that. So, in what time? Time is irrelevant these days, James. It's just about having fun. But anyway, while I was on my stroll in the early hours, so luckily there's an owl down the road from where I live as well, and he's doing my head in. You're talking about your pigeons. Do you know how loud owls are? And they're not even that big as well. Anyway, that's by the by. So when I was out for a run, I was actually listening to the audiobook of Mike Tyson's autobiography, which is a very, very interesting listen. And I'd recommend it actually. Obviously, as you'd expect with something like that, the language is a bit choice. But no, very honest and open. And I've got to be honest, I remember when we met him in, I think it was Salt Lake City. And yeah, he definitely comes across as I remember when we met him. Granted, we only met for a couple of minutes or so, but just a humble, honest chap. So he's quite, and this book reflects that. Like he obviously talks about how he's basically what his ego was like at the time, how he was dealing with stuff,
everything what went through it. But no, it's a very, very good, well thought out story to listen to.
Yeah, no, it's been really good fun to hear that. Thank you, everybody. We'll answer a few more next week.
I've got one more, James. One more.
Go on.
Bella asks, "What's your biggest pet peeve?" Mine right now is walking down the road and not knowing which one of you has to move out the way.
Whoever's nearest the road.
Well, you move onto the road?
Yeah.
No, but what if it's only a narrow pavement?
You move on to the road.
No, but who does? You or them?
The person who's nearest the road.
What are you on about? No. You're both walking down the pavement, coming against each other.
Yes.
Which one moves out of the way first?
The one who's nearest the road.
No, but you're both next to the road. I don't understand what you're saying.
One goes left and one goes their left, and then they switch around, don't you? Go past each other. It's not rocket science.
It's country lane.
You're one of these ditherers, aren't you?
Although I looked like a bit of a psychopath earlier, actually. I had to nip up to the doctors to pick up a prescription, and I put my mask on, obviously, to go in. As they
hands up, give me my prescription.
Literally, no, I had that. I had my gloves on. I had a hat on, and I even had some sunglasses on because it was so bright outside. I say a hat; it was like a little beanie type thing, so it was a bit chilly this one. But yeah, I looked like a nutter. Which I suppose solves my first problem because everyone moved out my way then. So
well, there you go then. There's no problem then.
Yeah, problem solved. Anyway, right, let's crack on and get to the interview today. Well, I say interview, more of a loving, lovely chat with Bonnie.
It probably will be more of a chat. I'm going to warn everybody right now. We're going to try and ask some things which we've never even asked Bonnie before because, like I say, we've known her for going on 20 years now. Very good friend of ours, very, very top person. So we hope you enjoy. Hi, Bonnie. How are you? Thank you for joining us today. Sorry, I'm trying to get a proper voice.
Thank you. Good to have a little brother-sister Zoom call.
Yes.
So there's probably quite a few people over the world doing such things at the moment, keeping up with long-lost family.
It's true, yeah. I'm sure there are many people happening with siblings that people love and siblings that they don't love. I'm wondering, I feel like this is like a time where you end up speaking to people that you don't always speak to, or speak for such a long time to people that you're kind of like, I know I have nothing to do, but actually I'm going to go now. Bye.
I was like, yeah, do you reckon there's people who haven't spoken to their like third cousins in about 20 years now? Well, let's see how they're getting on.
Yeah, definitely. Or trying to get everyone on one shared call. I think because now it's so easy. Like, I feel like people try and get like huge amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's happened to me for like 2 birthday calls. And it's like, wow, how is anyone going to like get their word into the dialogue?
Yeah, because we ended up doing we do a quiz like every Friday night with some friends of mine. And a similar thing. Like there's a couple on there who I never see. And it's quite. Turns out they're actually really nice people, but it's just one of those things like you never speak to them when you're out or anything like that. I suppose the opportunities never really come up, so it was quite. So in one way, it's been quite nice to get that type of, I suppose, forced interaction. I suppose you call it.
Yeah, the kind of the communication of. I've also, I think if you're in a bar or a space, they're just like there, but you're not really like. It's not awkward if you don't speak to them if you never kind of cross paths. Whereas I think when you're all put on a call and you're all together, you're all like on more equal footing, I guess.
So what anything you want to start off with talking about? I thought we talk about like one thing.
Hang on. I love it. Is there anything you want to talk about? I think that we should start.
Well, I think, yeah. What a great idea by me.
Just you start
James.
with what you think.
No, go on, Oliver. You're well in here.
Okay. So normally when we're talking about different stuff on these podcasts, we talk a lot about travel-based stuff and things like that. So do you want to talk? Obviously, you've done quite a lot of different stuff with it's to do with like Greenpeace, or even I was thinking more about the more recent one. Like, I was so, I suppose the word would be jealous would be a nice way of putting it. To when you went to Guatemala. So is there any like the photos of that just looks absolutely out of this world. So what was your reasoning, first of all, for going there for people who don't know? And was that the first time you've been there? What did you learn? Stuff like that. Because I say your pictures just absolutely blew me away.
Yeah, I think so. It was a trip I took in Guatemala back in February with a nonprofit called Rainforest Alliance. And it was basically to visit the sort of fieldwork projects they do there, because they're basically successful models of how you can operate sustainable forestry management, which basically means the conservation and protection of forest landscapes that are obviously highly beneficial to the whole planet's health, because trees, sequester CO2 that we produce, and sort of turn it into cleaner air. So they're kind of, forests, like big forests, like one of the rainforests in Guatemala, are kind of, the best visual is to imagine them as kind of being lungs of the planet. So I went there to learn about the communities that are from there and live kind of quite remotely in this kind of jungle landscape, and they live from the farming practices that they have there. So farming actual resources from the rainforest. So there's like a ramon tree, which is a really old tree that produces these nuts, and they harvest those. They have these specific type of palm leaves that they harvest, and they sell that mainly to the US market for like flower arrangements and things. So I basically learned how they all operate as cooperatives, similar to how we understand cooperatives here, really, how you can be a member of a cooperative and you have kind of like a stake in that, and your voice can be heard within that. So the village runs as a cooperative. So you all work for the cooperative, and then the cooperative will pay you from the work that you've put in, like the hours of harvesting. And so, yeah, it was really amazing. I'd never been to Guatemala as a country. And not only did we visit the area Patan, where the Maya Biosphere Reserve is, but we also
I was going to ask you if you went to that.
Yeah, so you fly into Patan from Guatemala City, and then the whole area of this rainforest is called the Maya Biosphere Reserve. And then within that, mostly, like, other people have been, if you're kind of going there more for sort of tourist reasons, there's 3 really big Mayan sites. So the most famous one is called Tikal. So it's like a Mayan ruin, and then there's like 2 other smaller ones. So they were really incredible, and they were kind of in the midst of this reserve. And then I also visited, obviously, Guatemala City, and 2 other places was Lake Atitlan, which was like completely different kind of landscape. It was like super high altitude, mountainous, with this like amazing lake in the middle of it. And even just like the culture and how people dressed, and even the kind of more specific older Mayan tongue of language that they use there, was like totally different to the rainforest. And then we also went to Antigua, which is a town outside of Guatemala City, where was the old original first city of Guatemala before kind of it then extended to become the newer capital, which is Guatemala City. And that's more like a really old Spanish kind of colonial style place. A lot of coffee is grown there. There's so yeah.
So did like the original I suppose not necessarily like the Mayan people, but did like a lot of these traditions survive colonialism?
No. I mean, I guess a lot of things didn't. I think it was also so many within just the Mayan kind of people. There's obviously loads of subsections of those people. So for instance, when you travel, like I did, from different parts, you can see the different reference points of like what survived differently. And I think also, from what I understand, is that naturally a lot of the communities will have moved around Central America. So what we understand as Guatemala could be Guatemala, but like a lot of different people maybe were forced out by colonial kind of settlers, but then kind of were pushed along and moved different places. I remember meeting one guy who was in one of these small villages in the rainforest, and his family had originated from Mexico, and they had come down to settle here to find work, kind of, I think like maybe 60, 100 years ago. So it just showed that it was kind of constantly moving, but it backs onto Belize and Mexico, the borders of Guatemala.
And how big is it as a country, like the size of it?
I feel like
this is like a real interrogation. Are you sure you went there? You didn't just
do you know the history? I think it took like, to fly from Guatemala City to Patan was like a 30-minute, 40-minute flight. So it would have been, and then to drive then the other way to Lake Atitlan was like a 3-4 hour drive.
Okay.
So I'd say to get from one side, you're talking like 12 hours maybe.
It's certainly bigger than I thought. I gave it credit for, yeah. So how does a trip like that come about? Did the Rainforest Alliance approach you because of your like your environmental activism and stuff like that, or did you go to them and say, hey, that's really cool, can I be involved?
Yeah, so when all the fires started happening in the Amazon rainforest, I did my own research into kind of trying to get a grasp of like what nonprofits like support communities that live in rainforests and like what were the best ones. And Rainforest Alliance were one of the ones that kept popping up. And then so around that time happening, I decided to like post on my Instagram stories just like a few different charities highlighted that I thought were like good if people were looking for like somewhere to go. And one of them was the Rainforest Alliance. And then they saw that I had posted that. And then a friend of mine's friend like works at Rainforest Alliance. So that's how it kind of was through a friend, but through them. It happened quite quickly actually, because I only met with them like in January of this year, and then they were already going on this trip in February. So I kind of tagged along, and they thought it would be like a great way to learn about their work. And since going there, I have been doing different things with them. Like they had like this whole gala plan, but obviously because of everything we're going through, they've changed the whole event to be this kind of like digital event that you can register to go and watch and do. So I'm helping them to kind of, I guess, like just creatively adding input to it and helping them direct the little like short film pre-recorded stuff they're doing.
Cool. When's that going to be?
That is on June 10th and it is free to register. It's called the Digital House Party on Rainforest Alliance. And it's going to be like 30 minutes of kind of learning about their work, celebrating different projects. And then it's going to be an hour of music. So it's going to be like different DJs doing like pre-recorded sets of music.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. But so it was more to do with the stuff then going on initially in Brazil then?
Yeah, so
when you got into it, because I remember seeing it on the news and just thinking like, yeah, obviously that president's a bit of a loon when it comes to especially that type of stuff.
I think what's so difficult what's so hard to understand with so many environmental issues is like, when is it corruption? When is it actually the environment? And when and who is affected? You know, I think basically it's like, because so many news channels and governments and whatnot are funded by these very polluting industries, like as we've even found during the time we're in, you begin to be like, is that news, or is that just they saying that because they're being paid by an oil company to say that? And same with like the plastics industry, you know, it spends a lot of money hiding stories and boycotting things. So for instance, with the Amazon fires and forests, you know, a lot of that is purposeful kind of burning to clear for cattle farming and different things. So, you know, however much it's like, oh, the temperature's rising and it's causing these fires, at the same time, sadly, some of them are kind of like purposefully set off, which is then becomes a climate issue because it's deforesting an area, which then destroys what the rainforest habitat was doing for the climate.
Yeah, and then once that's gone, it won't come back.
Exactly. So I saw when I went to Guatemala, they have this like what they call like the buffer zone around the reserve, which is areas that have already been deforested and turned into cattle ranches and stuff. And it's completely like it's just this land that isn't.
You would never know that it was there.
Yeah. And, you know, there's so much corruption behind the cattle farming, because a lot of cattle farming isn't actually prosperous cattle farming as an industry. It's literally just like fronts for a lot of drug trade, basically.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But and also as well, weren't they just taking land from indigenous people who'd been there for centuries?
Yeah, exactly.
And just claiming through that. And
so why I was also like, the timing of going to Guatemala was as it was because 25 years ago, the Guatemalan government decided to make this area and call it the Maya Biosphere Reserve. And within the reserve, they split it up into what they called concessions. So places where there were already villages and people living for, I can't remember how many, but a certain amount of leases essentially were given from the government for 25 years to manage it on their own, with their own strategies, basically, and they would like leave them alone. And these places where they granted these leases are like the areas that have basically had zero deforestation, whereas obviously these other places that aren't as connected had experienced deforestation. So it's like a prime like example that like it works if you let people who are from the land care for the land, who care about it, they'll protect it. So currently they were trying to renew a lot of these leases that they'd come up to their 25 years.
No, interesting stuff, really interesting stuff. But it's funny, it's interesting how you said about even just like the corruption on like government level or a higher level or something like that, especially in terms of like, I mean, I found it myself, like there's a completely biodegradable plastics company, among other stuff what they do. So it doesn't even leave microplastics, it's just completely gone within a time period. But trying to get that to some major retail, once they're all for it, and then you say it's going to add a smidge, like not even a penny more to your per bag type thing, and all of a sudden it's all about the bottom dollar. No.
And I do think, I think some people do believe, which I can sort of see why, is like during this pandemic, obviously so many different companies already, like oil companies in towns are going bust and different things. And obviously, sadly, governments have decided that it would be nice to bail them out and not people out. But essentially, if things go bust, like the price of oil and therefore plastics, because plastic is oil, will go up, and therefore the bottom line of prices will change, so that hopefully maybe a better material becomes same price point as new plastics. So in theory, like people will be like, oh, actually that doesn't make any sense anymore, like do we go with these new materials? I
can't remember when you didn't focus on environmental
when you didn't care.
Yeah, well, I was there burning my plastic bottle. I wasn't, I'm only joking. But when was it that you actually became not just involved but really passionate to go on like the Greenpeace vessels and then go to Coca-Cola headquarters and tell them what's what? When did all this come about for you? Because since you've been on about it, I mean, I carry this thing. I thought I'd show you my little cup. I've got 2 coffee cups which I carry with me. So there you go. You had a lasting impression on me, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that especially in the UK, we seem to be pretty good at recycling, especially from our homes and all that kind of stuff. So, but ever since I've seen you talk about, and you talked to me about it before, that's made me even more determined to what you can recycle do, because just that, if one person does something, then if every person does something, then that will make a big change.
Yeah, it's hard to like put a time or a point in which like all of these things kind of became not only just like something I was thinking and worrying about or curious about, into actually like me taking action, or me collaborating with different nonprofits or working with different organizations like Greenpeace and stuff. I think without knowing it, I guess I've maybe always had just like a curiosity as to like how systems work, because essentially when you see pollution, you see waste, you see plastic in the sea, you see different things, essentially it's got there because the system that should exist is broken. And there's many systems that have like, we've failed systems, and systems have kind of failed us, in the idea that like we have failed like this, I guess a system that's so inbuilt in us is consumerism, and like just like getting things and buying it and not really thinking in the moment of the 5 seconds that you could touch something. You're forgetting about the whole life cycle of that one thing. So you could quickly grab a to-go coffee cup and you've had it and it's done its purpose for you, and then it's kind of over. So I guess I've always been interested in, or just understanding that like bigger picture of things. I think even that's why I kind of went to sort of more interest in directing over acting, is because I was interested in like the systems of a whole film set and how it all kind of integrates. So I think that's kind of the same way I look at environmental issues.
No, it's interesting. And did you? So, I mean, 'cause you obviously grew up in London. So, moving to California, do you think that had more of an influence on your? I suppose you have more of an influence on you, like because you're a bit more close to the water, you're more close to the ocean, so you more notice. So you're reminded of every day, should I say? You go on the beach and you see, I don't know, like a 6-pack holder there.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
painting a very stereotypical picture of like a
yeah.
fish stuck in something like that, or a bird, or something like
Yeah, I guess
that.
yes, I guess. But living in California and living literally like walking distance from the beach now, I definitely can experience it more frequently. But at the same time, very different type of coastline to California. But as well as growing up in London, my family and I, since I was born, went to our little house on the beach on the south coast of England. And so I think without realizing it, even though I was like a city kid, in a way, I feel like that landscape had as much of an impact on my kind of like childhood and adolescence than I realized, which I kind of only realized later on. I was like, oh, why do all the stories I want to make or films I want to tell or things I'm interested in like always seem to have some sort of coastal landscape? And so I think, yes, for sure, for living here, but I think in a way that was also really influential.
James,
Yeah.
anything to add?
I'm trying to. It's really hard to gauge if you're taking the lead or not on this.
No. I'm sitting back.
No, I'm blown away by everything. I think it's really, really cool. What was so with the Guatemala thing that you've done recently? That would be the best thing that you've done so far, if you had to choose, or is that not fair to say? You can't choose because they're all very important in their own individual ways.
Kind of, I guess when I look at like the different trips I've taken with different organizations, I think the experience of being on the trip is both like really overwhelming and also like really helps to sort of like clarify your understanding of things. I think when people, and you just open the newspaper or you look online and you see some story about some climate crisis issue, it can be like naturally quite overwhelming. But I found from the trips, even though they've all been quite different, is that you just realize how much there is to like learn and understand, but then you realize they all kind of feed into the same thing and they all become this similar kind of issue of like what I'm saying, which is just like questioning where things come from and like really just asking for transparency behind the things you buy or the companies you support. I think what's really difficult from the time we're in is that when you suddenly start the journey of like understanding like what's up with the climate and our future, you obviously begin to like want to make changes and try your best as an individual. But I think, which is obviously amazing to do, but I think it's also unfair for governments and businesses to like put all of the onus and pressure on us to like change what we're doing. And I think the more and more trips I've done, the more that's kind of been clear to me that it's great to inspire individual action and like a shifting of habits. But I think it really comes down to like governments need to create policy that protects people and companies need to take back the ownership of like their waste and their impact and not put it on us. Because the truth is, yes, it's great we recycle, but like the scary statistic, the depressing statistic of how much plastic is actually recycled that's even put in a recycling bin is heartbreakingly sad. So, and then you're going to think, oh my gosh, should I not even bother recycling something? So I think it just comes back to like, again, like I said, the systems are like broken. And I do think like this time has been quite a highlighter of that. Because
it's been really noticeable, even with say, especially in England at the moment, because there's pretty much no air traffic in the air at all. To the point where I was in my garden the other day and this aircraft came over quite low, and I've never seen it on one, that flight path before, but even two, I could see, I thought, what the hell's that? So I ran inside and got on my laptop and pulled up the radar app, and I saw that how few aircraft is in the air over the country. But you can also do a time check on it. So you go back, say this time last year, and it was just incredible, the difference what was obviously it looks like the airlines are going to change for probably as much as the biggest industry probably of all of them so far at the end of all this lockdown. So what the shape of air travel will be at the end of that, we don't know. But it was a real eye-opener to me is how much air traffic there is in the air, which you don't really pay any attention to because it's miles above your head.
Yeah. Sorry, that's so loud. Wait.
It's the government's coming for you, Bon.
They're coming. They know I'm talking about corruption. Get out of our country. Anyway, I think the lessening of travel that we're all seeing and doing less of ourselves obviously highlights that like this is the kind of amount of lowering of flying and driving we need to be doing. And it's obviously proved that we've all proven that we can all mass mobilize together and stay at home. And we also need to like mobilize. And as people have used the language of like flattening the curve of the virus, it's like the same language is used often around the climate crisis, which is like flattening the curve of CO2 emissions. So all that kind of language around this seems like quite similar to the climate crisis. And I think when people kind of showed doubt maybe in the future of like, oh, we can't do that, there's no way that people are going to do that, I do think that this time will be like, well, we did it, for the coronavirus, why couldn't we do it for this kind of thing? Like there are, you see all these statistics on maps, like you're saying, like the air quality gone up, and there was an interesting thing that was like the amount of pollution in the air in China during a certain week or two actually saved like 75,000 people's lives, like future lives, because of like air pollution and how that affects your health. Especially
over there as well, because I remember when we were out there and we were doing James and I were in Shanghai, and they were reporting on in Beijing they'd had to stop work because it had reached the all-time limit of smog that you're not allowed out. But on the news, so it was the BBC News, like the World Service, and they started saying, and in Beijing, and the screen just went black for about 90 seconds or so, and then it came back up again. And that's obviously the censorship over there, so they don't see the full story. They don't see what this is doing to the obviously people are aware of that,
but it's like also statistics are always going to be like so different to different places. Like I was watching this documentary the other day that people might like, it's called The Story of Plastic, and I'm doing like a Q&A with Greenpeace next Saturday, not this Saturday, next Saturday, I want to say the 16th, but I don't know when the day is. Anyway, I'm doing a Q&A with some of the people in the from this film. And in this film, for instance, I think they're in Delhi at one point, and they sent some like, it's by like a plastics kind of refinery, like a chemical plant, and they had sent some air samples from this area to somewhere in the UK that looks at the pollution in air quality, and they literally sent a message back being like, do not go outside, do not, this is terrible, you cannot. And they're like, well, cool, because we can't do anything about it because we all live around it and we work here. So it's like unsafe, yet it goes on. And I think that's when I went to Guatemala, and what I have found from like learning more and more about the climate crisis and hearing different people's stories is the reason why people don't take action is because most of the people that are being affected by it now are communities that just basically get marginalized and not seen, in the sense that they're always often in lower income neighborhoods that are people, the communities that surround oil refineries or chemical plants or areas that are deforested. So I think until it starts affecting kind of people, the kind of demographic of people who govern countries, I don't think it's going to hit home yet.
Which I suppose goes back as far as the Industrial Revolution's birth, isn't it, really? The workers next to the factories and the owners are far away. So it's, as you say, it's not going to happen until it hits them to begin with, or where it hurts, which is more than likely in the pocket.
Yeah, basically.
So, never mind. James, find a segue into something else.
Right, okay. Speaking of the Industrial Revolution, that happened quite a while ago. Also happened quite a while ago. we, let's say, January 2001, King's Cross Station.
Yeah.
That's when we met for the first time.
I know, it was almost... we have like a anniversary? Like, don't you get those things where you leave school 10 years later and you get an anniversary? Is that this summer?
Yes, it was something. Wasn't it? I remember getting it'll be near to, would it be?
No, it's this summer because I was 19 when we finished and I'm 29.
It was near that, yeah. Because I remember being in the, I got one actually yesterday through that. It was 10 years ago that James, myself, Rupert and Tom managed to blag a golfing trip on the company credit card for the DVD extras of the 6th movie. Yeah.
Well,
two nights stay at the Ryder Cup's course in Celtic Manor. Yeah. Remember that? That came up as 10 years ago recently. So that was...
your memories.
Yeah, time flies by with that one, yeah.
But yeah, no, it's pretty scary that... because in theory as well, like we shot them for 10 years and then it will be 10 years since we finished them, which is to me really weird that it will suddenly become as long ago than how long the whole experience lasted. Because when I finished the films, I had spent more of my life in the films than not, because I was 29 and I was 9 when I started.
Yeah.
So I'd spent more of my life in them, which is crazy. But yeah, I can't honestly... sometimes it feels like yesterday, and then another time it feels like another person did it. It's like another life.
How did you get into it? I don't know if I've ever asked you.
Oh, you haven't heard me give this answer in
Yes, I have.
many...
Whenever
I feel
we
like
did a Q&A, James, you never sat down and listened.
I feel like, sure, in Q&As, I feel like I could probably give the other answers of other people. Like, well, let me tell you about these two. So my brother, Lewis, who's older than me, had read, like, the first 2 books, I guess, when I was, like, when it was, like, a known thing that they were making films out of the books. He had read them, and he was like, oh, you really remind me of this character in it called Ginny. You should audition for it. And I was like, what? No idea what he's talking about, what character, like never been for an audition or ever even wanted to be like an actor. And my mum came home from work and my brother and I were like, can Bonnie get an audition in Harry Potter? Like, how can we figure this out? So then my mum had like no idea. So she rang Bloomsbury, who were the publishers, and the publishers gave her the number to the casting director. And then my mum called them and they were like, yeah, sure, if you can just send a few photos of Bonnie and like could she write like a little sentence of why she wants to be in the film and who she wants to play. So I did that, and then I went for one audition with the casting director, and then like quite a while later, and we'd thought like that was fun, didn't happen, called back, and then I went and met with Chris Columbus and David Heyman. But I also
would we have already started filming at that point?
No, it still happened. Like, no, it was still happening when you would have been auditioning. Yeah. Because I remember when I went for the recall. Well, I went for the set. I swear you were both there, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe not. Maybe Matt was definitely there, because I remember like it was like in this room waiting to go in to meet them, and there were like other people waiting, but everyone looked like they were not auditioning for Ginny. Everyone was.
I remember an audition which there was Matt, Lewis, Luke Youngblood.
Yeah, I think it was that one.
So you were the other person. There was someone else there, but I can never remember who. Was that you?
It was me. It was like we were all waiting in this room that had like this big wooden round table kind of thing.
Wow,
that was it. Yeah,
and it was at Leavesden, like in the production office.
Yeah, and there was I just remember a water tank kept making bubbles.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Bloody hell, that's blowing my mind.
But and also though as well, the funny thing is that wasn't even like a final audition. That was like the second or.
Oh really? That was my final audition. Granted though, Ginny's characters literally, she didn't even say anything till like my first line that I then had in the first film. Chris Columbus gave me that day. Like I didn't even have it in script. So I wasn't. Yeah, my role was pretty small.
So we started filming in the September, but then we didn't film the King's Cross scene until the January.
Yeah.
And
I remember so cold. It was so cold.
So cold, yeah.
But
I had a hot water bottle like under my costume I was holding on to.
Well, on the set, obviously there was Oliver, Rupert, and myself. Yeah. But we hadn't met you or Julie.
Yeah.
until then. I mean, Chris Ranky played Percy. He was with us as well. So there's the four of us there, and then you and Julie came in, and I remember Julie screaming, like pretty much shouting down the train, "Where are my boys? I need to meet my boys!" And then you were with her as well.
Yeah, because I remember only meeting her for the first time there, and I'd obviously like never been on a film set or like knew anything. Like literally just, I always think about that, like how they just like put you on a film set and you're just gonna know like what all this terminology like kind of means.
Yeah.
And I remember her just being very much like, come here, like I've got you, kind of, I'll put you, I've got you under my wing kind of thing. And I remember just feeling so much safer knowing that I had her like showing me the way, not knowing at that age like what an amazing actress and career she had, so it was like years later, do you then sort of start looking into all these actors we were around's work, and you're like, oh whoa, these people are huge.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
cool.
it's crazy as well if you think it's like how, as a film family, the first time we met was probably half an hour or so before, if that, before the cameras were rolling on that platform.
I always think that, like, I think obviously there's just like so much to get filmed in a production like that, but I always think for the budgets that they have, like why there is not more time spent on those kind of things, just in terms of like rehearsals and dynamics. And I don't know, that's maybe me like more from like a director's point of view, where I feel like that's so, it would be super fun to do. And
every producer and accountant on a
nightmare.
Film, like, no.
Talking about 5 weeks of just like getting to know each other
in the Bahamas.
Yeah, preferably somewhere hot. But I don't know. Yeah, but I think, you know what though, like I feel like Chris Columbus as a director was so good at that, and I always feel he's like under kind of celebrated for the work that he did for the Harry Potter world, because I feel like he didn't make you feel like a kid. He made you feel like you were like there working like everyone else, and you were acting, and you had like something to give. Like he let you kind of gain confidence, I guess, and he just like made it feel like Hogwarts was a home. Like when you watch those films, I just think he added this warmth to it that needed to be established.
And again, maybe not necessarily understanding his stand, like for me anyway, understanding what Chris's actual standing in the industry was at the time. Being like our age, we're kind of like, oh yeah, Chris is this really cool guy who's he's open to listening to your ideas. Now, whether he actually wanted to take those on board or whatever, but he didn't say at any point did he ever say, yeah, your junior cast, we don't need to know. It was always like, which always gave you confidence into wanting to do stuff and try different stuff on the film set, which, as you say, is a totally different place. All this new terminology, everything like that. But yet you could still have a laugh with him, and you could still openly talk to him about stuff as well. And that was one thing. What now you mention it, thinking back, was just an incredible thing.
Yeah, he did just have a way with it, which he then realized from his other work, like why, like that was his wheelhouse kind of thing.
Yeah. I did actually saw a little nugget from a film the other day, actually, I was watching. So Mrs. Doubtfire was on the TV. And, at the very end, when they interview this really awful nanny who's really like bitter and everything, and they're crossing names off a list. Well, the final name they cross off is this nanny's name, but the nanny's name is actually Paula Dupre, who was one of the producers on Potter. Yeah, there you go. I saw that and laughed.
You're like, so, I know who that is.
Yeah, exactly. So it made me really laugh. But again, it was also, in hindsight, not understanding again people like Paula and people like that who played such a big role in getting the films moving to begin with.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, we talk about David Heyman as well, who got all that rolling. But just, I don't know, just in hindsight, it's just crazy that they gave so many young kids the freedom to have fun with it and not pigeonhole them with it.
Yeah, for sure. Like have fun, know that you were like, there was joy and like goofiness and fun, but then at the end of the day, like we were working, and I think that like balance was pretty good. Like it never felt forced, and it never felt like chaotic, because it could have been chaos really. Like they did, obviously without us realizing, manage us pretty well, but not to the point of making it not fun.
Strict.
Yeah, no. It was like a really good.
But also, I mean, if you think as well, like we had to get 3 hours minimum in a day of schooling, which I suppose as many kids now in this lockdown understand that rule. Maybe they have to get
I
so
know
many
it's funny.
hours
I
in a
was
day.
speaking to my friend the other day about his kids, and I was saying it's funny. This all really reminds me of like when you had to go and like find the work you were missing from your teachers and like speak to each of them and like do kind of your version of it. It's like a similar. I think it basically asks a lot of like organization and like dedication from you as a student, because you've got to like want to keep up with it as well as the laws of X amount of hours in a week. You also did have to be pretty good at like being on top of it.
Definitely. Yeah, exactly. And also as well, there's two things I realized. That one was I did very well at subjects I enjoyed, but subjects I didn't kind of took a bit of a back seat. But also I learned, and I'm sure that if there's a couple of teachers listening, they'll understand this. Not all teachers plan their lessons out weeks in advance. So it'd be amazing the amount of times you'd say to a teacher, yeah, I'm filming in, say you're on the Tuesday, I'm filming from Thursday till whenever, like 2 weeks time. And it would be, right, okay, we'll just work from the textbook. There would be no plan to it. There would be nothing to it. So it was you learned that side of it as well. That, oh, right, they actually blag it quite a bit of the time.
I had no idea. Or I found like it was more overwhelming sometimes going back to school. Like if I had like a day or two off, sometimes of not filming, sometimes I'd be like, actually, I'm just going to still come into the studio anyway and catch up on my work. Because sometimes I would go to school and I'd have like maths and I'd be like, okay, cool, I feel like I'm pretty up to speed. And then go to a history class and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm not. Like it would just be hard to be at the same level and time and stuff.
No,
I definitely don't miss school.
No. Well, again, as well, but like we're talking about, like you've got to get 3 hours in a day. You've got to take breaks at certain times of the day for the crew. Obviously, lunch breaks have got to be a certain time period. We had to be offset by 7, was it, or 8 o'clock,
5,
something like that. Pardon?
It was just so many hours before you then had to come in the next day.
Yeah, so you couldn't do a certain amount of time in between.
You could be there. 9.5 hours. You could be from the beginning.
Yeah,
right.
Whereas now, being adults, it's 12 hours, and they can ask you to do longer than that if you want to do it, which normally
it's kind of wild when you hear people's out, like some, will go in at 8 a.m. and leave at like 4 a.m. and obviously then you won't get called in the next day till later, but it's also like crazy.
I did a film last year before, which there was a 21-hour day.
Oh,
that
is wild.
So I think we wrapped it, I don't know, something stupid like 4 a.m. And it was literally, so we'll see you at 8. And I was like, what, in the evening? Yeah.
Yeah, you realize how or also we just like those, the Harry Potter film sets were just like so set up, and you go on other film sets and you're like, oh, whoa, I like really started back to front with this. Like you start with these like huge, amazing sets, and then you realize like there are very many different versions and spectrums
of doing it.
Yeah.
Nice. I mean, what would you say would be then in terms of like the differences, I say talking about differences in going on to different films away from Potter, but in terms of the Potter films, what would you say was the one that stands out the most filming wise?
Ooh.
So I don't mean as in like it was better because, I mean in terms of, so we were always asked what's the best
hard
one,
because
which
I
find
feel
hard
like
to do, but
there was like different, like the Chamber of Secrets is really cool because suddenly I was actually acting, whereas in the first one I was just like in that one scene, and I really enjoyed it because we did all these like different weird like B-roll stuff, which was meant to be all the stuff where like she's taken over by Tom Riddle's diary, and there was all these like weird kind of cutaway stuffs that we did that felt quite experimental. Like there wasn't really much of a plan. We just like second unit, like me possessed by a diary, like it was like these weird things.
Was that the one filmed in Gloucester? In the
cloisters, isn't it?
In the cathedral.
Yeah, we did stuff there. Yeah.
And then with the writing the blood on the wall.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So is it true? Like you may know. Is it true they had to cut that because otherwise it would have become a 12 or something, or a PG-13 or something like that?
Well, there was a scene where I went into the chicken coop and like killed the chickens.
Really?
Yeah, we filmed that. I'm like, what?
Was this?
Did you actually? You didn't actually.
Yeah, but I was
going to say you were
snowstorm. It was like a snowstorm in this thing, and it was like me walking to the chicken coop. I mean, it was like.
So was this was Peter Mcdonald directing second unit then?
I think
Yes,
so.
he would have been.
Yeah,
He would have been,
definitely.
yeah. So for those who don't know, Peter Mac is an absolute legend when it comes to this type of stuff. But
So
he's
good.
probably bringing some of the stuff he worked on Rambo into it as well. So
Yeah, true.
yeah.
I just love he was just like, yeah, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
probably not going to get used, but we did. But so that film was fun.
So I remember you were shooting in the Chamber of Secrets while we were all filming something else on the whatever. Like I said, the two units that are running. Obviously, you got first unit, which is the principal photography, and second unit, which is all the bigger shots. We were filming all the longer shots on second unit, and you were in the Chamber of Secrets. It seemed you were there for months.
Oh my God, we were there for weeks. And I'm like, obviously half dead most of the time. So I'm just lying on the floor, like, while Stan's doing all these like different things with Christian Coulson, who's Tom Riddle, all these stuff with like the basilisk. And I was just like, when am I going to wake up? And then I was like, today. No, didn't get to it. Tomorrow. And then finally it's like, I get to wake up. But yeah, it was a cool, it was one of my favorite sets. It was big and cool. But and then, I don't know, I loved, and then they all grew on me in terms of the films being, like when I reflect back on them, I'm like, oh, but that one was really fun because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, because
like,
it does all merge into one, doesn't it, after a while?
Yeah, like I loved all the Dumbledore's army stuff. I love that because, you know, then it was well from the fourth film, we started having like different, much newer cast come in, and that was kind of refreshing. And
did you like the, I've never told anyone this, but I hated the room of requirement set.
The room of requirement set. You know what? I liked it, and then
it was cool to look at.
And then I got really claustrophobic in it.
Yeah,
and hot
because it's just like really hot. We had to wear those shoes every time we stepped into it because it was all mirrors. And then towards the end, it was just like too many people in one room. Like it got a bit hysterical. But I think that's why I like it, because I just think it was like such a specific time when everyone was just like, I don't know, just like annoying teenagers.
I think I broke at least 3 ones in that set by just throwing them around. Or I know I was trying to be a drummer. When you know, drummers like spin the cool. Yeah. I failed miserably.
But then I also loved all the Battle of Hogwarts. I don't know, it's hard.
Well, the Burrow was a good set.
So good. I also loved how it like changed. Like each time it was like another like weird thing added. Or that sequence we did where it was like all on fire.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah.
The trees and the water. Yeah.
Yes, very much so. So I remember that I think you were the first person out of the cast that would actively go into the art department all the time.
Yeah.
You kind of opened the doors to everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go there for it.
What does this do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think my curiosity definitely led me into some good apprentice little things.
Yeah. Didn't your work experience, wasn't that at the art department?
Yeah, my like this project that I did in my like design technology A level, I think, had to be like, if other people are in class, you have to like find like a design firm that you go and work with for a week to like create this like dissertation-y style kind of project thing. So I was like, oh, I'll just go into the art department instead. And so I had to, for the project, you had to like follow something being made. So I like tried to follow like the process of the set being made as my case study. And then
which one?
I can't even remember, honestly.
No.
I don't know.
How did you hand it in? Because it's all confidential. Did you just have to say set?
Yeah, I think it had to be like super obscure and like kind of, I don't even know how I did that. That's true. Maybe I had to like use an example of like an old set from a previous film.
Yeah.
I don't know. But then I definitely, outside of that case study, did a lot of like work experience in different departments, like when it was like the summer holiday. And then I remember doing the editing department. I remember shadowing David Yates for a few days, did costume, props, art department. I can't remember what else. And then I also went into some sound stuff too, like in the post-production. I went and watched them do some of the like recording of the symphony and like with the music and yeah.
See, I remember especially the second movie when you were at Leavesden Studios for the whole time. You were literally like someone threw a bouncy ball in the room. And that's the best way I can describe it. Is it was like zigzagging everywhere, speak to everybody, seeing what everybody's doing.
Yeah, it's like, what does this do? What does this do? What does that do? Just gotta ask. If you won't ask, you won't get.
I really feel like I didn't utilize everything what was going on. I mean, I had a little nose in the art department every now and then, but other than that, I suppose, that was probably mostly it, I suppose. And then the rest of it was just goofing around in Rupert's room. Yeah, we definitely missed out, I think.
Yeah, I think it's just that, curiosity of like, I also think it's that when you're younger, you're just like not afraid to ask questions. Like now, I think sometimes you do things and you don't want to look like you don't know something, or I think that's just like being an adult. You have this feeling like you need to know you have your life together. But I think as a kid, there was this like innocence that meant like you would ask the most obvious things, which is kind of cool. Which I think is what was so special about getting into those films when we did, is because like it's before you kind of become like aware of yourself. Yeah. Like I think it'd be very different if you started acting when you were like 18 or something, when you're so conscious.
Yeah. Especially on a big production like that.
No, it's definitely it's definitely fun. But is there, in terms of like awkwardness on a set or something like that, because obviously there's a scene when you and when Ginny and Harry are kissing and then George is in the background type thing, did you have any idea what that was going to be like before we shot? Because I didn't have a clue. I just knew that you guys were doing your thing at the front and I just had to creepily be in the background. So I was actually watching I think it was a couple of days before or something, I was watching Looney Tunes because I'm a big kid at heart, and I noticed that when Bugs Bunny tiptoes in, very trying to be quiet but trying to let everyone know he's there type thing. So he took so I just did that and see what happened. So in the background, when you watch the film, that's why I'm looking like I'm really over exaggerating it, was to do that. But I remember doing it the first time and just thinking like, did that and then thought, right, they haven't laughed in my face yet, so I think I'm okay. But then just standing there, and I felt really awkward with it anyway, because it is a weird thing to do anyway. And then putting this toothbrush in my hole in my ear, which is actually good. It actually folded in on itself, so it made it look like I didn't really have much. Well, I don't have anyway, but didn't look like I had a lot going on in between the ears, so it just went all the way through. But was that, as I say, but did you know obviously, I don't mean like planning it out throughout the whole scene, but did you have any idea how that scene was going to go on for, or anything like that?
No, not really. I think that's with all things. I do think like all the blocking we did for anything was like that morning. It wasn't like that prepared in terms of like knowing how it's going to go. And I think all those kind of scenes are just so weird because you're like emulating something that's like meant to feel romantic and like this moment, and it's like so gentle, yet you're surrounded by like the most unromantic, ungentle environment that is a film set. Like it's so like profound and like kind of technical.
There's literally someone having a donut behind the camera, like on somewhere
exactly,
on
making it, and you're like and just like so many people, and like, and then they need to do it again for some weird reason that's usually technical, and it's just like, okay, it's just weird. I think.
How annoying was it on the press tour after that, being asked that every
Oh my gosh, yeah. What's it like to kiss Harry Potter? And also even just like you meet people, and in terms of like the fan base and stuff, and obviously that's like they want to know it. That's a big question. I just say he's a terrible kisser, and then and then they'll keep it a secret. But yeah, no, it's funny. It's also just the pressure, I think. You read, it was always, every time the book came out, you didn't know what was going to happen to the character, so then you're like waiting to find out what happens. And then I remember when that happened, it was, at first it was like, oh, that's cool, like that's obviously such a development, and like for the character, and it means that my role developed. But then like the second wave is like, oh no, now I have to like do something that's like quite significant, and loads of people are going to have their opinions on how they think it should be done, and if that's who he should have ended up with, and everyone has their opinions very much so in that world. So it's also like, oh no, now it's like a bit more of a responsibility.
Did you find then that reading the books when they came out, as you said, like none of us knew what happened to the characters or anything like that until we read the books when they came out. So we were probably the most eager fans in the world because you want to know what's happening to your character. Did you find that when you read the book for the first time, you'd almost skip through? Because I was guilty of it. I'd almost skip through the general plot line. Right, Harry, George, right, what does George do now? Did you almost find that you did that, or are you a lot more literate than I am to actually
I didn't do that. I did slowly read it. But in my family, we'd all be reading it at once, like each with our book. And I was maybe the third fastest. Like I was not the fastest and I wasn't the slowest. But so either a member of my family would get there earlier or friends would. And they'd be like, oh, did you read page 622? You're like, no, what happens on that page? You know, and you'd be like, try and force yourself not to flick forward and look at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like your fate in the pages are coming up.
James, segue.
Speaking of learning things, what was it like to learn the tango?
Well,
Oliver sent me all these notes earlier, so I'm trying to put them in.
You mean in the fourth?
In the fourth one, because I know that we learned.
I was so annoyed that I learned this whole dance routine.
Didn't you learn the foxtrot as well?
Well, Matt and I learned this whole tango sequence. No, I don't think it was foxtrot. But anyway, this whole sequence, this idea that like Ginny and Neville secretly loved their ballroom dancing and like had like created this whole routine that meant that like for a split moment, Harry was like saw me in a way that he didn't see me before, as like a supposed moment to like set up for the next film. But I didn't ever get to show him my tango. And Matt and I were so annoyed because I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think all of that was fun. Like the fact they got Wayne McGregor in, who's such an incredible choreographer, to come in and just teach us like a simple routine, yet they got this like world famous choreographer in. Again,
and similar things to some, like when some of the major actors turn up at the time, I'm probably definitely speaking for myself, obviously, but I had no idea what a huge reputation he had.
Oh yeah, with so many people, you don't realize, do you, till afterwards? Definitely. You're like, oh, because also it just like happens to you a lot. You know, people just show up and you're like, okay, cool, hey, nice to meet you, which is also nice because then you feel like everyone's kind of on a similar footing because you kind of treat each other like that.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way how we were saying before, how important it was as kids to be like given the confidence that like our opinion mattered and like being there was important. And I think it was good to make us like take it seriously, but like for ourselves, not for other people.
Yeah, definitely. Because I remember when we were doing all those, when we were learning that stuff for the Yule Ball sequences, that it just seemed to be, I don't even think it was planned at the beginning anyway, that we would have that type of choreography tuition, as it were, which was in hindsight was absolutely brilliant because it was I had no idea. And the first day when we rehearsed, I don't know if I can't remember, were you rehearsing with us as well, or were you rehearsing separately?
I can't remember.
I can't remember
anything.
But I remember the first time we practiced it was literally like in the film where you've got the boys on one side and the girls on the other.
Yeah,
and there was like all us like who were very, I suppose, nervous, teenagers just standing there, and you've got like these girls who are, I think they were all from Italia Conti or somewhere like that, one of the dramatic schools in London, and they would, we'll do that now, and
and they're like, you're like, oh god, okay, that's not me.
Okay, yes.
Well, isn't there that scene as well where McGonagall's teaching us and we filmed it in Oxford? Do you remember that scene?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's like that big gramophone thing, and like, doesn't she get like Rupert up? I can't remember. That was like,
yeah, and it was
some
it was
things
exactly
like didn't even need to perform. Like we were literally living it. Like we were living that kind of like, oh no, we have to do the dance scene with them. No.
Yeah. It was cool though, because I just remember it was the first time that I think you had a skill, or you developed a skill anyway from filming, what you could take forward anywhere else, which was I did anyway.
So do you use your
like,
wand movement? We had all those, like, I love it, like halfway through the film, they were suddenly like, okay, now wand movements and like dueling needs to have move numbers and things. Do you remember that? All of the.
Do you want to know a secret, Bon?
We'll tell you a secret.
Oh, yeah.
We walk because Leeson Studios originally, unlike it is now, this amazing film set, this film studio, it was originally a factory, so it looked like a very old-fashioned. It was a Rolls-Royce.
Rolls-Royce
factory.
Yeah.
So the inside of it was like pretty much like a factory hangar almost.
How many times
and inside, inside they had set up all these marquees. And what I was getting to anyway is that we were walking down this way, past around the marquee corner, and we saw the guy who was teaching everyone how to do all the dueling and everything like that. He had his back to us, and we could see there was I think Evie was there, Matt. I can't remember who else. Like Alfie, loads of all the other guys were there, standing, looking quite. I don't know if confused or bored is the answer, but anyway, we saw. Well, the guy was getting really into it and like showing everyone what to do. We kind of looked at each other, stepped back, and went, "Yeah, we'll skip this bit." So we didn't actually do it.
So wait, you never learned those moves? You just decided to stick with your own wand skills?
Yeah, I mean,
we thought because they're slightly older, they'd be already a bit more advanced.
They'd be just so advanced they'd made up their own moves.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
we have our own unique style now.
That's
Or
why
you would
if
just
you
be
look,
like, or you just be like, that wasn't part of the curriculum when we started school. That's a new curriculum.
Yeah, we deemed it as, you know how people have different kind of handwriting. That was our. Yeah.
We were chatting with a few of the stunt lads as well, who had also seen they had already had their own interpretation of it. So they just said, yeah, so if you just hold your hand up on one of them and then go back on the other, that'll be fine.
It was so that it was just like, what? This is like, kind of, I get it, but also like, it was funny.
It
did
just show the detail that was going into.
It did, yeah.
Just right.
Sure.
Which probably in hindsight, probably in hindsight I would have gone into it now, looking back.
What, and done it?
Yeah, I'd have done one lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, at
It's
least
pretty
show a
funny.
bit of
I think it was like pretty humorous, to be honest. The whole thing. I was like, what are we doing? Like, how did my life end up here? This is crazy.
That is all good fun. All good fun in the end. But no, I think that was it, because it's quite funny. We've been back to the. I'm trying to. Sorry,
Come on, you segue.
No, I had a spider running across. I don't know where this spider came from.
Oh my god, a bird flew into my house earlier. Thank God I managed to get it out, because it really freaked me out.
It would have been terrible audio.
It would have been just flapping in the ceiling. I realized I had too many. I feel like every bin man is coming to my street right now.
It's the corporations, Bon. That's
it's all like, come to collect my recycling.
Yeah,
and then
exactly. Recycle this.
They're coming to arrest me.
But in terms of like, I'm trying to find a segue. So, segueing over to.
Obviously,
that was less natural than what you were doing before.
All right. So going. Okay. Let me try.
What topics have you not covered that you want to cover?
I'm just trying to think of ones where I think we've kind of done the whole Potter thing now, because we've spoken a lot about different bits and bobs. So I was just trying to think of one, say, where have we done stuff like that? Well, like music, for example, like when we were out in Philly last year. Mm-hmm. So we were actually, because you and James went to a gig.
We did.
Yeah, and you just said, "Oh, my mates are playing in town. Do you want to go?" So we were meeting up with some friends. So I was like, "No, I'll hang with these guys." But James went to the gig, and I don't think he quite understood the size of the band.
Going to a little show, it's just gonna be like 10 people and like in a pub.
I actually thought it was gonna literally just that.
Did you literally think that's what it was?
Yeah.
No, what? No, I thought you knew the band.
Well, I did when I heard them play and all that.
Their name, right. Because I remember being like, "Come on, we're gonna get gotta go. Like, we're gonna miss. I really want to see them. They're like a really good band."
So for those who are listening, who was the band?
Tame Impala was the band, which is an Australian band who they must have had now 3 or 4 albums out.
Right, and we got there was about 20,000 people, and Philly's quite. Could be a bit of a tough crowd.
To the point. To the point.
To the point. Some people. I remember we got to our seats. Well, obviously it's standing room only, but we got to where our seats should have been.
Yeah.
And there were these guys there. Do you remember? And then like this kid like looked, and I was like, "You're in our place," and he was like, "Hmm."
Yeah. Don't care.
And then the guy behind kind of tapped him on the saw you and me. I don't know if he knew who we recognised or something, but not this guy on the shoulder and said, "Yeah, move! I'm going to kick you in the head." So, like,
Oh my god! I didn't even hear that. I didn't realize that. It's like,
cheers, mate.
There's a friendly crowd.
So, well, we got our spots, which was good.
Yeah, we were pretty close.
But that was a really good concert. But then now I'm thinking about it. We've been to quite a few musicals.
Yeah, like
years,
I feel like festivals too.
We've done a few festivals together, haven't we? We definitely did.
We did Reading, didn't we?
Definitely
did Reading with who else was there? It was
Katie came.
Katie Young.
Afshan.
Afshan came,
yes.
And then I feel like Dan and Jodie were there too that year.
Yeah,
and Sarah
they went hardcore and camping though, were they?
No, we were hardcore.
Yeah.
And trying to think what else.
Glastonbury. We saw you there.
Oh yeah.
Although I think we were all dressed in dresses.
Oh my gosh, you were. Yeah. I remember that.
I remember walking over and I don't know who you were with, but I remember your face just dropped like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Oh, look who it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I remember walking there and there were these people who were probably taking one or two things they probably shouldn't have done. And they just saw like, he was just like, oh my God, it's Fred and George.
It is pretty funny when you're in environments like that and people are so in the moment of like being at the festival or concert, and then they're looking at whoever they're like excited to see, and then they like see you kind of more close and they're like, wait, what? It's like this like, no, that can't be real. Like I must be just like out of my head of losing my mind that I'm assuming that they're those people.
Yeah,
I think it's the same happens for kids, like when they're like set on you being a character and then they see you out of context and it's like, what? But no, like that's not possible.
Well, I still get that with a lot of people. Like they say, I can't believe you dyed your hair. And I always think
all the other way around.
Didn't actually fly broomsticks either, but you know, you see past that
what?
bit.
You didn't? Is magic not real?
Don't tell me you did. I mean, the flying car, that thing pays for itself, but you know.
I definitely flew on a broom, a real one. There was actually a video that was going around, I saw a lot on Instagram, that was like people doing it with their dogs. Have you seen that? It's they'd get like a dog on a broom. It would be like, I think what they were doing is that someone was holding the dog, right? And they had a cloak covering the person holding the dog. And then they had a broom. So someone's videoing it and they're like doing this under the cloak with the dog. So I was like, I couldn't do it with my dog because I couldn't hold my dog. Like he's too big. But you do this and then you have like a broom going through it. And it looks like they're floating on a broomstick. Loads of people have done it with their dogs. It looks pretty funny, but I haven't tried.
There's something to do in quarantine.
Yeah, if you want a challenge, I can nominate you.
Which is actually how they did it when we were filming, didn't they?
What, someone standing under us holding our arms? Like,
I remember once convincing someone we actually did it while skydiving.
Oh my God, that would be fun.
But that's the funny thing about going back to the studio tour when we've been back is how like all these props and everything, how they're preserved and they're like these, you know, fantastic artifacts and everything like that. But I remember actually throwing someone said to me, can you chuck me the beaters, the sticks they've got, the bludgers, and I was like, yeah, okay. So just tossed it down. Person couldn't catch it and it just hit the floor and went like completely broke.
Yeah.
No, it just completely shattered.
Oh, broke, yeah. For like now it's like they're like the Mona Lisa behind glass, and before they were to us they were just like, oh yeah, just the wand, just like costume, like whatever. It's like spilling down them. You're like, oh, they got another pet, they've got more. It's fine.
But and also, like, can you remember the tables in the Great Hall where they used to like the amount of graffiti on all the varnish from there?
But they had to re-varnish them every year, I think.
Yeah, I can remember.
But those, like, they were all brand new made for the movies, and they hit them with chains to break them down, like big metal chains. To make
That's always baffled me. It's someone's job to make something look
old. Like there was literally that department that did that for like clothes and stuff, like the breakdown department, and they'd have like all these different great tricks of like picking at things with like emery paper or copper wire, and they would like wear things down, and they'd be probably good people to like wear jeans down.
I remember that our school trousers, they were from Harrods.
Very fancy.
Weasley's
had
only,
no money. We're like, oh, I'm going to go shop at the most expensive department store.
That's where it went.
Yeah, they'll last. But as you say, it blows my mind that there's people actually who do that and do it so well as well.
Yeah, the detail was really amazing.
But anyway, have you got much on after this quarantine period is all over, directing and stuff?
It's like this unknown
it's how long's a
time.
piece of string, isn't it?
It is how long is a piece of string.
So with the directing thing, when did you get into that? And when did you get into it?
I guess, like I was saying, how I was super curious as to like understanding all the different departments, or like asking questions, or spending the time in the like work experience was probably like the beginning of me realizing that I wanted to do other things in the industry. And at the time, all my like final years of school, all my projects ended up being very like film based or like photography and stuff. And I knew I didn't want to go to drama school, but I knew I wanted to go to university. So then I decided to go study. It was like a film and television degree that I did that was still at an art school. So it was like a BFA program. And I ended up doing that. I started my first year of uni in the last year of filming, and really loved it. Ended up finishing in directing, because you like had to finish in a specific strand, like you could finish in editing or cinematography. And then since then, which was like, I think I graduated like 8 years ago, and have just been making my own short films and I've done some commercials, music videos. And now I'm like working on what will be my first feature film.
Ah, cool.
Which is still kind of early days. Feels like it's been going on forever. It's pretty difficult making independent films.
Can you share a title, or is it a working title at the moment?
The working title of it is called Unearthed, like to unearth something. And a lot of my films and stories are...
And it features the ocean?
It does feature the ocean. It's set in like it's set in a town. It's based on a specific area in California, but really it could be any kind of coastal town. But it's in a town that's around a river that leads to the ocean. And it's basically sort of like an action / like monster horror movie about essentially like the toxicity that runs off chemical plants. So it's like the kind of the toxic waste that comes off this chemical plant in this kind of small town is sort of why this monster is then born and comes to kind of like hunt the town. So it kind of grows in the town's old landfill, and it kind of comes out of that. So it talks about how like we're the monster at the end of the day, and like we'll just create our own monster to kind of like hunt to kill ourselves. So really uplifting stuff.
Don't give away too much of the plot though, Bon.
No, I mean, I haven't. I've said that much. But yeah, so it is, to be honest, with all this going on, it would be great if I filmed it like the beginning of next year. But we'll see. And then I've also, in this time, because I can't shoot anything, been working on these 2 book kind of concepts that I've been meaning to sit down and do for a long time.
Nice. Has that come in? Because I've seen it. You've been doing like on your Instagram. You and your friends have been doing like the stories and the poetry and all that kind of stuff. Has that stemmed from that?
Different. No, that was just like that was just kind of a random inspiration to do that from spending more time at home and realizing. I guess I was just like really touched by different things that people were offering online that were just like. So I thought, because that was something that I started as a practice myself of reading poems online out loud, but not really. That was like separate. These 2 book things. One is one that I'm trying to. That was basically once a script that I wrote like 3 years ago that I'm now like reimagining as a book. And then the other book is a non-fiction sort of book. Oh my God, that's so loud.
Is that your dog?
No, my dog is a silent angel. That is not my dog. My dog is like fast asleep in his bed. So one book is what used to be a script that I was kind of hitting a wall with because it was like quite a big concept, and obviously when you're trying to write something for a film you got to think about budget, whereas if you write it for a book it's kind of like limitless, so that's why I changed it to a book. And then the other one is kind of basically a book about sustainability essentially, but through the lens of just like your home, rather than like sustainability in a global thing. It's more about like home practices and how you consume and do things.
Yeah, but you've also got, I've actually been doing research surprisingly on this one, so
Oh, okay.
yeah. Well,
With what?
kind of. Someone sent me all this information.
Yeah, I was going to say, I texted you last night, Bon, a little spoiler. I text James last night, the meeting code, everything like this for doing this today. And I didn't realize until you text 15 minutes before we'd agreed to do it. So we,
oh, you didn't know.
You didn't know.
That's by the by. Anyway, I was going to...
As is James's preparations. Anyway, sorry.
I was going to say that you've also got an audio book that you recorded out right now, right?
Yes.
Tell us about that, because that is rather epic.
Yeah, for the Tales of Beetle the Bard. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
So unless you got another one, I'll be real.
No, I did another one before, but that's not as interesting. I mean, it's great, but this one's more interesting. Yeah, so Tales of Beetle the Bard, similar to when Jo published the book of Tales of Beetle the Bard, like she basically did that to raise money for her charity Lumos. Mm-hmm. So she did the same with the audiobook. She basically gave the rights to Audible to produce the whole thing, with the idea that all the money would go to Lumos. So I guess because I've done different work with them, including a trip that I did with Ivana to Haiti about 4 years ago, done different things with them, and then they asked me to read one of the stories in Tales of the Beetle the Bard, which are basically are fairy tale tales of the magical world, and it was fun. I haven't actually listened to it. I should listen to it, because I know that they ended up like producing, because some audiobooks are just like the clean audio, obviously reading it, but they did it much more like how we used to have radio plays, in the sense that there's like sound effects and there's music, and I think it's much more heavily produced, which I think is nice, because I feel like I miss that when things feel a bit more like theatrical. So I will listen to that. But the story I read was Babbity Rabbity and Her Cackling Stump. So so all the proceeds will go to Lumos. And other people reading it was like Ivana, Jason Isaacs, Warwick Davis, Eddie Redmayne, Jude Law. So it was nice, like a mixture, obviously, of the Fantastic Beasts and Harry Potter.
But Bon, thanks so much for coming on and filling us with a lot of knowledge about various topics. But thanks, once again, thanks so much for being good.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Again.
I know, we still fun, we still got it.
Yes.
We still got it, kids. Yeah.
We still got it.
I remember when I was
50 years ago when we did something. It's going to be that. It will happen.
I've got 4 questions. 5.
Oh,
4.
You've got more questions.
4 or 5.
Okay, so he throws this out every week.
Okay.
They're kind of changing and evolving, but let's just say they're every week. Okay. What's your favourite song?
I would say Unknown Legend by Neil Young.
Very top choice. Favourite film?
Children of Men by Alfonso Cuarón.
Very good. Who also directed the 3rd movie?
He did, yeah.
What is your favourite film or TV quote?
Again, Bon, I can only apologise. I thought James was going to send you these questions yesterday.
No, I like this. It's more, but I would have. Okay, film or TV quote. I would just say like the opening title sequence of The Simpsons.
What, the
Would that
tune?
be something? Huh?
The
The
tune.
tune. Yeah, I guess that's not really
Okay.
words, is it? Oh, fine.
You know, dialogue in a film. What?
Dialogue. I don't watch silent movies.
Okay.
Favorite quote in a movie? Oh my gosh. Or a TV show. I could give you a book one, but not
Yeah, book one would work.
a book quote.
Yeah,
Okay, it's from an essay by Emerson, and it says
I'm very familiar with his work. Yeah, you can say anything right now.
The health of the health of the eye seems to demand a horizon. We are never tired so long as we can see far enough.
Oh.
That is my quote. That's why I like the beach, because you got a horizon the whole time.
Very good.
So not very. Anyway, that's what it is, because that's all I can think of right now.
That's blown my mind. What's your favorite food?
My favorite, bread and butter. Literally, like I can.
You've gone from
too adventurous.
Fancy essay to bread and butter.
I'm just a simple bread. I don't know. I like pizza. That's basically bread and butter.
You don't change it. No, bread and butter's fine.
Bread and butter, honestly.
Yep.
Like.
And favorite drink?
Red wine.
Any particular grape?
I like a Californian Cabernet.
Very nice. Very
It's
nice.
my preferred if I'm going to be in America, because I like to not drink exported things when I don't need to.
Pop up to Napa.
When I'm in England, I'll have more of a French Bordeaux, personally, but it'll change according to where I am.
For some reason, I've just now got my visions of you tonight with a LP of Neil Young playing, reading under a candlelight with your bread and butter.
I'll be in the dark ages. I'll be listening. It'll be literally like a vinyl with like candlelight, bread and butter, reading Emerson essays. Honestly, that's you pretty much just painted a picture of my life. So there you go.
Right.
Oh, good.
Well,
Cool.
on that bombshell, Bon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Wicked. Cheers, Bon.
Bye.
Okay, see you, bye.
Bye.
Huge thanks to Bonnie there. We had a great time catching up, and we even learned some things that I have been trying to figure out for the last 20 years. I have always been wondering who that other person in that audition room was, and now I know.
It was just like the old Cambridge spy ring. Who was the fifth man? So, well, now we know. It was Bonnie Wright in that room with us. So the Cambridge spy ring, from the biggest like spy espionage of all time. You don't know that story?
Oh, no.
Okay. Just go and look it up when you go away this weekend. It's basically about how these educators who basically worked for the Soviets, and they actually got as far. One of the chaps, I think I can't remember his name. It's like Kim Philby, something like that. Actually worked. He was head of MI6, and he was actually shuffling information to the Soviets at the time. But there was always a thing of who is the other man, who turned out to be the curator of art at the National Gallery.
Oh, I've seen that because it's in the Crown, isn't it? Yeah,
it's in the Crown, exactly. Yeah. So there you go. So now you know where that came from. So
okay. Anyway,
trying to put a bit of history into this. This program. Educational. It
sure is. Well, Oliver, thank you very much for joining me this week. Everybody out there as well, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. We've got hopefully a really fun guest next week. We're just trying to set that up right now. Until then, stay safe, look after each other, and have a good week.
Cheerio.